You guys know that even when I am on a beautiful Caribbean vacation, I'm still going to bring you Karen Read updates. And there's been a lot of shit that's been happening this week, so I want to make sure we get it all covered. And there's a number of different things, so bear with me because there's a lot to cover. This week, a new judge was assigned in Karen Read's civil case, and this is the civil case against Karen Read. So this is the one that was filed by John O'Keefe's family. Multiple counts, so let me just refresh your memory. They have accused her of the wrongful death of John O'Keefe, pain and suffering to the family, emotional distress to members of the family, and then obviously they're seeking punitive damages. One part of this was already dismissed, and it was the claim of emotional distress by John's niece. They said because of the situation and her involvement, it really didn't amount to the legal definition of emotional distress. So her part of the case was dismissed. I think the O'Keefes face an uphill battle here because she's already been acquitted of the murder of John O'Keefe. And in fact, in that second trial, they did very clearly indicate that he was never struck by a vehicle. So I think it's going to be hard to show that she has some culpability in his death. Now, in the meantime, the merry band of idiots known as the McCabe's and the Alberts and Higgins, they all threatened to file a lawsuit against Karen Read and Turtle Boy for defamation. They say, like, these people have just constantly defamed us. We've done nothing wrong. We're just innocent witnesses, and they've gone out of their way to defame us, and they threatened a lawsuit. Don't threaten if you're not ready to bring. And Alan Jackson immediately fired back with that exact thing. Like, bring it. I'd love to get every single one of them up on the stand, but they're playing imaginary games. They do not have a case, and they won't bring it because they know they would have to testify in court to all of these things they're claiming. Alan Jackson was right to the point when he said usually people claim defamation when they're just trying to mask their own legal problems and their own involvement in a situation. The big whammy this week is that Karen Read filed a civil case of her own, which we were waiting to happen. And the defendants in this case are Michael Proctor, Yuri Buchanan, and Brian Tully, who were all at the time members of the Massachusetts State Police. Now the civil suit is going after them in their individual capacity, meaning she's not suing the Massachusetts State Police. Maybe she will down the road, but right now it's just these individuals. So it's those three gentlemen, plus named defendants Brian Albert, Nicole Albert, Matt McCabe, Jen McCabe, and Brian Higgins. So there's a total of 8 people named in Karen Read's civil lawsuit. They are referred to, the 5 McAlberts and Higgins, they are referred to as the House defendants. We all know who they are, they're the McAlberts, right? So anytime I'm talking about them, they're referred to in the documents as the House defendants, all being accused of working together to shield from liability the people who were actually responsible for the death of John O'Keefe. Now, this is going to get long, and I have a ton of notes, so stick with me. But there's 108 different points that they made in the documents. Let me just rapid fire some of them at you. They're alleging that John O'Keefe was killed inside the home at 34 Fairview, and that the homeowners did attempt to frame Karen Read. That the Massachusetts State Police allowed homeowners to divert the investigation away from themselves and toward Karen Read. That there are injuries consistent with a physical altercation and dog wounds and scratches, and there are no injuries consistent with a car strike, which is what we've known all along. They're saying that the police never did search the home at 34 Fairview for blood evidence, DNA, or fingerprints. They're saying that there were missing items of John O'Keefe's clothing, including like a shoe, a hat, no winter coat. All of that should have been suspicious, and they never checked the home for any of those items. In fact, no member of the Massachusetts State Police went inside the home for more than a week. No one checked any of the witnesses for cuts, bruises, scrapes, anything that would indicate an altercation with John O'Keefe. They allowed the witnesses time and opportunity to coordinate their stories by not immediately doing interviews at the police station, and legitimate interviews, recorded, video, all of that documented. They did interviews at people's homes, people's workplaces. It was very casual. Some weren't done until much, much later, and proper records were never kept. The documents formally allege that Proctor planted evidence at the scene on John O'Keefe's clothes and on Karen Read's car in order to support the false narrative. Tully and Buchanan never should have assigned Proctor to this case. They knew he had personal relationships in this town. They knew that he was directly involved with the family through his sister. They also knew, frankly, he was a shitty cop, and at some point they should have figured out that he was presenting false reports and presenting false evidence, and they never pulled him off, and they never monitored his work. The documents say that the altercation occurred inside the home or the garage. John O'Keefe was attacked by the dog. He fell backwards and hit his head on something that was rigid, which were surfaces that were consistent with what was in the garage. They allege that they used the Ford Focus. They moved the Ford Focus into the street to block the activity so passersby could not see what was happening on the lawn. It goes on to remind us about all the suspicious behavior that night, like Brian Higgins going to the Canton PD and kind of shielding his face from the cameras a little bit, that there were calls between Brian Higgins and Brian Albert that night. Jen McCabe's very suspicious 2:27 a.m. Google search. It alleges that Jen McCabe intentionally rerouted their search for John that morning back to John O'Keefe's house instead of going to 34 Fairview to give them more time to get their situation together over at the home. Point 58 talks about how they never thoroughly investigated Higgins. He was allowed to present, here's some text messages of mine between me and Karen Read, but they never searched his phone. And in fact, when they provided a preservation order for that phone, Higgins then drove to a military base out on Cape Cod. He pulled out the SIM card, he cut it in half with scissors that he brought with him. That's new information to me. And he put them all, like the phone and the SIM card, in 2 different dumpsters and then drove back home. The suit goes on to say that Karen Read was arrested before any surveillance video, any ring camera, any thorough investigation was done. No exculpatory witnesses had been spoken to. They didn't even have the medical examiner's cause of death, and they arrested her anyway. We all know the scene was not secure. There were no photos taken of 34 Fairview until February 1st, which was 3 days later, and there were no photos ever taken inside the home or the garage. We know that there's 42 minutes missing from the Sallyport video, and we know another one that the Canton PD provided was inverted, and some of the video information was not even provided until before the second trial. And although there is a camera around the garage area of Brian Albert's home, there was never any subpoena for any records. He was asked about it very briefly in one of the grand juries, but nothing was ever done to explore if he had any video or if there had been any video tampering over the night. It is extraordinarily robust, this lawsuit, but let me give you the counts. Count 1 is malicious prosecution under the Fourth Amendment. This is against Proctor, Tully, and Buchanan. This is Section 1983 of the amendment, and it is prosecution without proper probable cause. Ooh, say that 3 times fast. Count 2 is supervisor liability. This is again against Buchanan and Tully. Count 3 is conspiracy to deprive Karen Read of her Fourth Amendment rights, and this is against all 8 people. Count 4 is by Massachusetts law, they violated her civil rights, so this is again against all 8. Count 5 is common law malicious prosecution, so it's the same thing as count number 1. This is just at the state level. Count 6, intentional infliction of emotional distress. They do talk about, Karen Read has a couple of different serious illnesses that she has battled. This has exacerbated her illnesses, plus she's lost her job, her home, her reputation, her car, millions of dollars in debt. All of this has caused great emotional distress. And the final count, count 7, is civil conspiracy. So that is what was filed this week from Karen Read's team against the 8 defendants. And we will wait and see. We know they're already lawyered up because they got lawyered up almost right away. But we will wait and see what happens next.